Have you noticed that even the things you once cared about now feel heavy, not painful, just empty? You wake up with goals, but the energy to pursue them is gone. Effort feels expensive, motivation feels fake, and deep down you wonder if something inside you broke. Tonight isn't about laziness, it isn't about willpower, and it isn't a personal failure. It's about how your brain has been quietly rewired by the modern world, and why the absence of effort isn't a character flaw, but a biological signal. And more importantly, how to reclaim what was taken from you. Have you ever found yourself staring at a task you once loved, feeling exhausted before you even begin? That sense of heaviness, that lack of drive, is not laziness. It's not a moral failing. What's happening is biological, and it's happening inside your brain's dopamine system, the very system that evolved to make effort feel rewarding. Modern life, with its relentless barrage of notifications, instant gratification, and constant stimulation, has quietly rewired our reward circuits. Dopamine is the chemical messenger that signals this matters to your brain. It fuels motivation, focus, and the satisfaction we feel after accomplishing a goal. But here's the key point: dopamine is not a constant. Your baseline levels shift depending on your environment, behavior, and even your daily habits. Every time you swipe, click, binge, or seek instant gratification, your brain registers reward, but it's fleeting. Over time, the things that once naturally motivated you start to feel flat. Effort begins to feel pointless. The natural connection between working hard and feeling good breaks down. What many people don't realize is that motivation is like a muscle. It can atrophy. When your brain is repeatedly exposed to immediate rewards, it adapts. Neurons in the reward pathways reduce their sensitivity. Essentially, the system designed to help you chase meaningful goals becomes desensitized. The more your environment gives you instant pleasure, the higher your dopamine threshold rises, and the more ordinary tasks feel unrewarding. Writing, exercising, learning, even connecting with loved ones, all of it can feel like climbing a mountain. It's important to understand that this is not about willpower. The problem is not a lack of effort. It's a biological signal that your brain has been overstimulated and your baseline reward sensitivity has shifted. The modern world is essentially training your brain to undervalue sustained effort and overvalue short-term pleasure. And the effects are profound. Attention spans shrink, procrastination skyrockets, and the satisfaction of long-term achievement fades. Fortunately, the brain is remarkably plastic. Neural circuits are always capable of rewiring, even in adulthood. By deliberately controlling exposure to high-intensity stimuli, limiting social media, binge content, and other immediate rewards, you can lower your dopamine baseline back to a healthy level. Pair this with structured effort in meaningful tasks, controlled bouts of focus, and physiological regulation like movement and sunlight exposure, and your brain begins to relearn that effort itself is rewarding. The key takeaway is this: when effort feels unbearable, it's not a flaw in you, it's a signal from your brain. It's telling you that your reward pathways have been hijacked. But just as they were hijacked, they can be recalibrated. Meaning, the sense of purpose, drive, and satisfaction you thought was lost forever can be restored. It takes awareness, deliberate practice, and small but consistent changes in your environment and habits. Understanding the biology behind why nothing feels worth effort anymore transforms frustration into empowerment. Once you recognize that your struggle is rooted in the wiring of your own brain, you gain the ability to reclaim motivation, not as an abstract concept, but as a tangible, trainable process. And as you begin this recalibration, the weight that has been pressing down on effort will gradually lift, revealing the natural joy and drive that were always meant to be yours. Have you ever noticed that the harder you try to push yourself, the less it feels like it matters, that the very effort you pour into tasks seems to yield diminishing returns of satisfaction or motivation. This is not a reflection of your character, intelligence, or discipline. It's the consequence of how your brain's dopamine system has been hijacked by modern life. The chemical signals that once made effort feel meaningful are now being overridden by constant, high-intensity stimuli that give short-term pleasure but long-term flatlining of motivation. At the core of this problem is dopamine, a neurotransmitter that encodes reward, motivation, and the salience of what matters in your environment. Dopamine is released not just when you achieve something, but in anticipation of effort and progress toward a goal. It's the fuel that bridges desire and action. But when your environment continually bombards you with immediate rewards, endless notifications, social media hits, video streaming, and other instant gratifications, your dopamine system adapts. The neurons in your reward pathways reduce their responsiveness, your baseline dopamine levels rise, and tasks that previously felt rewarding now feel flat, heavy, or even meaningless. This cycle creates a paradox. The brain is working harder, seeking more stimulation, yet the sensation of satisfaction diminishes. This is why even meaningful goals can feel like climbing a mountain. The more you chase the high-intensity rewards of modern life, the less you experience natural motivation from slower, sustained, and effortful achievements. Importantly, this is not laziness. It is a biological signal, a protective and adaptive response of the brain to overstimulation. The implications are profound. Attention spans shrink, procrastination increases, and the sense of purpose fades. Many people assume that if they just try harder or force themselves, the problem will resolve. In reality, effort itself feels costly because your reward circuits are desensitized. The brain is essentially saying, I don't perceive value in this task relative to the high-intensity rewards I'm used to. Understanding this rewires how we approach motivation, not as a moral challenge, but as a biological one. The good news is that the brain is highly plastic. Neural circuits are constantly capable of rewiring, even in adulthood. By controlling exposure to high-intensity, instant rewards, limiting social media, streaming, and other immediate stimuli, you can lower your dopamine baseline. Simultaneously, you can increase the salience of meaningful, effortful tasks. Structured work sessions, deliberate focus, physical movement, and even controlled stress exposures signal to your brain that effort is meaningful and rewardable. Over time, the brain relearns that progress, not just immediate gratification, produces satisfaction. The key insight is this: when effort feels futile, it is not a flaw in you. It is a sign from your biology. The sensation of resistance is a symptom of overstimulation, not moral failure. Recognizing this transforms frustration into a framework for recovery. By strategically recalibrating your environment and brain chemistry, the sense of purpose, engagement, and satisfaction that once felt lost can be restored. Effort can feel effortless again, but only when we honor the biology behind our feelings. Modern life has shifted the balance between instant gratification and meaningful reward, but with awareness and intentional practice, the bridge between desire and action can be rebuilt. Motivation, focus, and drive are not gone. They are waiting to be awakened through deliberate, biologically informed action. Have you ever asked yourself why you no longer feel excited about the things you once loved? Why even starting a task feels exhausting, and finishing it rarely brings the satisfaction it used to? The first thing to understand is this: your motivation is not broken. What has changed is the baseline of your brain's reward system, specifically the dopamine circuits that govern desire, focus, and reinforcement. When the brain's baseline shifts, even effort toward meaningful goals feels unrewarding. This is not a moral failure, nor a sign of laziness. It is biology signaling that your system needs recalibration. Dopamine is the chemical currency of motivation. It is released not only when we achieve a goal, but also in anticipation of effort. It creates the wanting that drives action. However, in today's modern environment, our dopamine systems are being repeatedly overstimulated by high-intensity, low-effort rewards, social media likes, endless video streams, notifications, and other instant gratifications. Each time the brain experiences these rapid hits, it adapts. The receptors responsible for signaling reward begin to desensitize. Your baseline dopamine rises, meaning that previously rewarding activities, exercising, learning, creating, or working toward a long-term goal now feel underwhelming. This shift explains why you can feel exhausted despite having the same energy as before. It explains why tasks that once felt engaging now feel tedious. It's not that your motivation is weak. It's that your brain's reward machinery has been hijacked by artificially intense signals of pleasure. When the brain becomes accustomed to immediate, high-intensity rewards, slower, effortful forms of satisfaction are perceived as comparatively less valuable. In essence, your brain has been trained to undervalue sustained effort. The solution lies in recalibrating your dopamine baseline and retraining your neural circuits. The brain is highly plastic. It can adapt and reset when given the right conditions. Reducing exposure to high-intensity, instant rewards is the first step. This could mean limiting social media, managing notifications, or setting boundaries on digital consumption. Simultaneously, engaging in structured, effortful activities, learning, creating, exercising, or pursuing meaningful work signals to your brain that delayed rewards are valuable. Over time, this restores sensitivity to natural sources of satisfaction, making effort feel intrinsically rewarding once more. Importantly, this process is not instantaneous. Motivation rebuilds gradually, much like strengthening a muscle. Consistency is key. Small, deliberate actions, finishing a task, taking a focused walk, completing a workout, or even practicing a creative skill, serve as repeated training signals. Each action reinforces the neural pathways that link effort to reward. In parallel, physiological factors like sunlight exposure, movement, proper sleep, and controlled stress regulation further prime the brain's reward circuits for recovery. Understanding that your motivation isn't broken transforms frustration into empowerment. It shifts the narrative from self-criticism to biological insight. When effort feels heavy, it's a signal, not a judgment. By respecting the brain's adaptive nature and intentionally reshaping your environment, you can restore motivation, engagement, and joy. The tasks that once felt draining will begin to feel achievable, meaningful, and rewarding. Effort, which once felt like a burden, can again become a source of purpose. Your drive was never lost. It was muted by overstimulation and environmental pressures. Recognizing this distinction is the first step toward reclaiming it. Motivation is not a fixed trait. It is a dynamic reflection of the brain's reward baseline, and with awareness and practice, it can be restored in today's world. It often feels like nothing is worth working for. You start a task, but before long, your attention drifts. You check your phone, scroll through social media, or binge a quick hit of entertainment. These behaviors are not harmless distractions. They are rewiring your brain's reward system. The modern environment, filled with high-intensity, low-effort stimuli, is training your brain to crave immediate pleasure while undervaluing delayed rewards. The very things that once motivated you now feel trivial, effortful, or even pointless. At the heart of this phenomenon is dopamine, the neurotransmitter that governs motivation, reward, and learning. Dopamine is released not only when we achieve a goal, but in anticipation of effort and progress. It's the chemical signal that bridges desire with action. In an evolutionary context, this system ensured survival. Effort toward meaningful goals, hunting, building, or social cooperation, was intrinsically rewarding. But the rapid, constant stimulation of the modern world hijacks this system. Every notification, video, or digital reward floods your dopamine circuits, providing intense but fleeting pleasure. Over time, the brain adapts. The natural release of dopamine from effortful, long-term tasks is diminished, making sustained work feel unappealing. This cycle creates a paradox. The more you chase instant gratification, the less sensitive your brain becomes to natural rewards. Tasks that once felt meaningful, learning a skill, exercising, creating, or pursuing a goal, now feel like uphill battles. It's not laziness, it's biology. Your brain's reward pathways have adapted to high intensity, short-term stimuli, and effortful, delayed gratification is perceived as comparatively less valuable. Motivation seems to evaporate, but it's not gone. It's simply muted. Reversing this requires intentional action. The brain is plastic, capable of rewiring even in adulthood. By limiting exposure to instant rewards and structuring environments that emphasize delayed gratification, you can reset your reward circuits. This might include managing phone use, setting boundaries for streaming, or intentionally scheduling periods of focused work without distraction. Pairing this with meaningful, effortful activities sends a signal to your brain. Effort is valuable and progress is rewarding. Over time, dopamine sensitivity to natural rewards increases, making long-term effort feel intrinsically motivating once again. Physiology also plays a key role. Movement, sunlight exposure, proper sleep, and controlled stress are not just wellness strategies. They directly influence dopamine function. Regular exercise, for example, enhances reward sensitivity and primes the brain to respond positively to effortful activities. Exposure to natural light early in the day sets circadian rhythms, optimizing alertness, focus, and motivation. Even small adjustments in physiology amplify the effect of environmental and behavioral interventions, accelerating the recovery of natural drive. Understanding that the struggle is biological, not moral, transforms perspective. When effort feels unbearable, it is not a personal failing. It is a signal that your reward system has been overstimulated. With awareness and deliberate recalibration, the sensation of futility can fade. Tasks that once felt heavy begin to feel achievable, meaningful, and even enjoyable. Motivation, once lost to instant gratification, can return stronger than before. The key insight is this: your brain craves meaningful effort, but it needs to be retrained. Instant rewards dominate because the brain has adapted to them, not because you are inherently weak. By intentionally managing stimulation and engaging in structured, effortful activities, you can restore the natural connection between effort and satisfaction. The weight that modern life has placed on effort can be lifted, revealing the intrinsic drive that has always been within you. Have you ever wondered why even small tasks can feel exhausting? Why getting started feels heavier than climbing a mountain? It's not a question of discipline, character, or willpower. It's biology signaling that something in your environment and brain has shifted. Modern life, with its constant stream of instant rewards and high-intensity stimuli, is quietly rewiring the very circuits that make effort feel worth it. What once felt naturally motivating now feels like an uphill battle. Understanding why requires looking closely at the interaction between your biology and the environment you inhabit. At the center of this phenomenon is dopamine, the neurotransmitter that governs motivation, reward, and learning. Dopamine is released not only when we achieve a goal, but also in anticipation of effort and progress. It encodes this matters in the brain, motivating action, but the system is adaptive. When you repeatedly expose your brain to rapid, high-intensity stimuli, social media notifications, streaming content, instant purchases, dopamine circuits respond. They adapt by decreasing sensitivity to natural rewards and raising the baseline of what feels satisfying. Over time, effortful, delayed rewards like building a skill, completing a project, or even meaningful social interactions begin to feel comparatively unrewarding. This is why motivation often feels fleeting. Your brain is signaling that the energy required to complete the task outweighs the perceived reward. It's a survival mechanism. In an environment filled with artificially intense, low-effort rewards, the brain optimizes for immediate pleasure. But this optimization comes at a cost. Long-term effort, persistence, and meaningful engagement feel expensive, leading to procrastination, burnout, and frustration. The paradox is that your drive isn't gone. It's being masked by the overwhelming signals your brain has learned to prioritize. The good news is that the brain is plastic. It can rewire itself even in adulthood. By deliberately altering your environment and behavior, you can recalibrate your reward circuits. This begins with reducing exposure to high-intensity, immediate rewards. Limiting social media, managing notifications, controlling digital consumption, and creating structured work periods without distractions all signal to the brain that delayed effort can be rewarding. Pair this with meaningful activities that require sustained attention, learning a skill, practicing a craft, exercising, or engaging in focused work, and your brain begins to relearn the link between effort and satisfaction. Physiological factors amplify this effect. Exercise, sunlight exposure, adequate sleep, and controlled stress are not just wellness habits, they directly influence dopamine function. Movement increases dopamine receptor sensitivity, while sunlight exposure helps regulate circadian rhythms that optimize alertness and focus. Even controlled stress, such as intentional cold exposure or focused work sprints, signals the brain that effortful activity is important and rewarding. Together, these interventions reestablish the natural balance between effort and reward. The essential insight is this: when effort feels costly, it is not a personal flaw. It is a biological signal that your brain has adapted to a hyper-stimulating environment. Recognizing this empowers you to take deliberate steps to restore motivation. By shaping both your environment and behavior, the weight of effort can be reduced, and the satisfaction that comes from meaningful action can be recovered. Ultimately, biology and environment are not obstacles, they are signals and tools. They tell us when our brains need recalibration and guide us towards strategies that restore drive, focus, and engagement. Effort, when aligned with biology and environment, can feel natural, rewarding, and even energizing again. Have you ever felt that no matter how hard you try, nothing seems meaningful anymore? That the tasks you once approached with energy now feel heavy, and the satisfaction of accomplishment has vanished? This sensation is not a personal failure, it is a signal from your brain. The circuits that govern motivation, effort, and reward have been altered by modern life, overstimulated by constant high-intensity, low-effort stimuli. Yet the remarkable news is that these circuits are plastic. With deliberate strategies, you can recalibrate your brain and restore the natural sense of purpose and drive that has always been within you. At the core of this process is dopamine, the neurotransmitter that encodes reward, motivation, and the salience of what matters. Dopamine is released both in anticipation of achieving a goal and when the goal is accomplished. It motivates action and reinforces learning. In the modern environment, however, dopamine pathways are continually overstimulated by instant gratification. Social media notifications, streaming videos, endless scrolling, and immediate digital rewards. The brain adapts, receptors become less sensitive, and the baseline of what feels rewarding rises. As a result, effortful, delayed gratification learning, creating, working toward goals, feels comparatively less valuable. Motivation diminishes not because of a personal flaw, but because your brain has been conditioned to prioritize high-intensity, short-term rewards. Recalibrating the brain begins with deliberate reduction of these overstimulating inputs. Limiting exposure to social media, digital notifications, and other forms of instant reward allows dopamine pathways to reset. It lowers the baseline of what your brain perceives as rewarding, making effortful tasks more intrinsically satisfying. Alongside this, engaging in structured, meaningful activities, exercise, creative work, skill acquisition, or focused professional tasks teaches the brain that sustained effort produces reward. Over time, neural circuits relearn the natural association between effort and satisfaction. Physiological states also play a critical role. Movement, sunlight exposure, proper sleep, and controlled stress directly affect dopamine function and neuroplasticity. Physical activity increases receptor sensitivity and primes the brain to experience reward from effort. Exposure to natural light helps regulate circadian rhythms, which optimizes alertness and focus. Even short bouts of controlled stress through intense focus, cold exposure, or interval exercises signal that effortful engagement is meaningful. Combining these physiological strategies with environmental recalibration strengthens the brain's ability to reestablish motivation. This recalibration is not instantaneous. It requires consistency. Motivation behaves like a muscle. It strengthens with repeated effort and diminishes with neglect. Small, consistent actions, finishing a project, dedicating time to a creative pursuit, practicing a skill, or completing a focused workout signal to the brain that effort is rewarding. These repeated experiences slowly rebuild sensitivity in dopamine circuits, restoring the natural drive that was once diminished by overstimulation. The essential insight is this: when nothing feels worth effort, it is not a reflection of your character. It is a signal from your biology and environment. Recognizing this transforms frustration into a roadmap for change. By managing stimuli, engaging in meaningful effort, and optimizing physiology, the natural connection between effort and satisfaction can be restored. The tasks that once felt burdensome will begin to feel purposeful, energizing, and even enjoyable again. Ultimately, motivation is not lost, it has been muted. With awareness, deliberate action, and respect for the brain's plasticity, the sense of drive, focus, and fulfillment that once felt out of reach can be recovered. Effort can again feel natural, rewarding, and purposeful, and your brain can relearn the joy that comes from meaningful accomplishment.